The road to making Solo, a Star Wars man, a reality has been a long one. Arguably longer than a road that people perceive to be equally long, but in fact, that road is somewhat shorter comparatively. Now, I'd love to wax poetic about metaphorical roads all day, but right now we're here to talk about the early drafts for Solo. Concepts that were developed, then put aside, as well as things from the trailers that were missing from the final cut, what is currently known about the Phil Lord and Chris Miller version, deleted scenes, and more. Here's the topics that are going to be covered. Those are time-coded in the description if you want or need to jump around. And I understand that your time is precious, and I'd hate to waste any of it by, say, pausing for a full 11 seconds so you can stare at a garden gnome with its pants down. Let's take a journey back to the beginning of the Star Wars franchise to shed some insight into the development of the character Han Solo. In George Lucas's 1973 draft for what would eventually become Star Wars A New Hope, Han Solo was initially described as the leader of the Hubble people before Lucas settled on something slightly less ridiculous, him being a big old green-skinned guild alien man. And little boy Han Solo was also slated to appear in episode 3 as an orphan raised by Chewbacca on Kashyyyk, whose role in the movie was to help Yoda locate General Grievous. This was dropped because, well, look, I don't know why, but presumably because it sounds terrible. The idea for a Solo spin-off film, though, was actually at the forefront of George Lucas's mind as recently as 2012. This was before he handed over ownership to Disney for what amounted to more money than the collective amount of people who watch this video will make in a lifetime. He sat down with Lawrence Kasdan and Kathleen Kennedy to discuss plans for a new trilogy, plus potential spin-off projects. Kasdan wasn't sure if he was interested in helping develop future Star Wars films, but he was all, hey, I could do a Han Solo film. He's my favorite character. Lawrence Kasdan did end up writing on the project after his work on The Force Awakens was completed, enlisting the help of his son, Jonathan Kasdan. As soon as the Lucasfilm-Disney merger was done, the wheels began turning on this project, codenamed Harry and the Boy. Hundreds of sketches and concepts were created in order to flesh out the story, a lot of which can be found in the book The Art of Solo by Phil Szostak. A really interesting and insightful read. So let's right now get into some of those things that were considered, but then unconsidered. The orphan element from the film seemed to always be on the cards, even in the earliest of versions, including one where Corellia has a kind of 19th century London look, and there's a kind of Oliver Twist Fagin relationship between Han Solo and his captors. Also, at one point, he didn't end up joining the Empire, but the Resistance. Kira, originally called Kura, went through multiple designs, including a few that imagined her as alien, and the White Worm crime worms also have a number of alternate looks of increasing grotesqueness before the final design was settled on. The opening shot of the film on Corellia also at one point included the iconic imagery of a Star Destroyer cruising on by before it's revealed that it's in pieces in the construction phase. Also, Imperial design was implemented in more elements of construction, including giant walker cranes. The speeder sequence was also to take inspiration from the movie Grease, with the chase to slip into a basin, and there was also to be an on-foot pursuit through a factory. In fact, Han at one point was going to be a factory worker, working on a construction line for the Empire. After being caught and imprisoned, Mimban in some drafts wasn't in the script at all. Beckett's crew would grab the hauler straight from Corellia. In this version, Han and Chewie met in a prison block where a fight between them ensues. There's a few alternate origins for these characters' first meeting that we're going to get into. Another idea that was floated was that Han joins not the Imperial Academy, but the Rebellion in the early days as a rebel pilot. After being a bit reckless, all Top Gun style, he crashes a fighter into a hangar and is promptly court-martialed and sent to Mimban. And again, that's where he meets Chewbacca, except this time they meet on the battlefield. This sequence was to be very World War I trench warfare inspired, similar uniforms and all. There aren't really many two variations on Chewbacca for Solo. I mean, there never really is. In The Force Awakens, he had an arm bandage, and in this one he's got what? 2 bandoliers? I mean, what do you do with him? He's a giant dog man. But there was a version of him where he'd be much shabbier, like a stray dog. The Kasdans were also thinking of flipping the life-debt situation and having Han owe Chewie after he's knocked unconscious and carried to safety after they've been battling Imperial walkers together. The occupants of Mimban were also going to be seen appearing as this guerrilla force to oppose the Empire, who are very much at home in the muck and mud, comparatively to, say, stormtroopers. Another little meet cute that was going to happen was a bar fight between Han and Chewie, with surprisingly them being evenly matched because of of Han's scrappiness, with them smashing through tables and chairs whilst other patrons rush to get out of the way. We also get this slightly alternate design for Beckett. I like him without the wig. I think they probably should have gone with this, but hey, whatever. And also multiple images of Rio Durant. Dryden Voss also, as I'm sure many of you already know, was originally played by Michael K. Williams. Because 70% of the film was reshot and he couldn't make it back for these reshoots, he was replaced by Paul Bettany. But originally, he was this kind of cat man. Paul Bettany was probably all, I am absolutely not going to be a cat man. I spent 5 months straight in purple face for the Avengers. You can all go to hell. Other designs considered for Dryden Voss were a lizard man, a lizard man, a lizard man, an alien with Spawn's mask, a blob, a different kind of blob, the monster from Super 8, a man with a pile of snakes for guts, a muscular alien intellectual with a tiny tree, or a giant muscular alien intellectual with a regular sized tree. It was also thought at one point that it'd be a Lasat, which would have been a race carried over from Rebels. All of these though seem immensely complicated, and considering the recast plus limitations on time, I get why they went with just Paul Bettany with the lines on his face. But you know what, despite that, I thought it worked really well. I thought he did a great job. Now there's still information coming out concerning what was in Dryden Voss's chamber. We've seen Mandalorian armor, Sith holocrons, very familiar gold idols. But there's one piece of concept art that shows that he had an Ewok along with 2 Sith lightsabers. I mean, that Ewok must be stuffed because if there's 2 lightsabers in there, I mean, there's your escape route, obviously. An Ewok could easily kill a room of people with 2 lightsabers. Getting the Falcon right was a huge undertaking. However, before taking ownership of the Falcon, Han and Chewie were going to be in possession of an even bigger hunk of crap ship described as a kind of motorhome. But with the Falcon itself, the basic idea was take the core design of that ship and then build off it. The results of this are vast and varied, with a lot of ideas leaning towards making it symmetrical. There's also ones with eagle and flame decals on the front that looked like something a band that was briefly popular in the early 80s would spray on their tour van. Also along with this are various other designs for L3. It was thought at one point she would be a droid that actually comes with the Falcon ship model and would reflect the look of that. The train heist also at one point was to be done on horse yak back, also with more trouble from stormtroopers than they ended up giving. The Kessel Run was also at one point to be interrupted by the Cloud Riders harpooning the Falcon. And the Kessel Run, which, like all things, we can see multiple variations of. One where they're flying through a shattered planet, between gravity wells, through various zones of varying degrees of danger, and more. Also Tanab, as mentioned in Return of the Jedi,
someone must have told him about my little maneuver at the Battle of Tanab,
was to play a role in the film. At one point it being a world consisting of multiple platforms, one of which would tip, allowing for an action set piece to take place. It was also suggested that it would have a jungle aesthetic and that would be reflected in Dryden Voss's ship with its hanging gardens. It also looks as if some footage that didn't make it into the movie snuck its way into the promotional material. Here's a short montage of things that didn't end up appearing in the film. I don't know, unless they did. It's hard to pay attention. I'm from that generation. It's my parents' fault, really, for letting me watch too much TV.
I've been running scams on the street since I was 10.
Trust me, you're gonna love it.
And which branch are you interested in joining?
Your name?
Thought we were in trouble there for a second, but it's fine. We're fine. What do you think? Well, what do you know?
The Lord and Miller version, though, it's been said, involved taking a lot of risks in order to create something surprising, emotional, and unique. But whenever they wanted to take a risk, it was met with a no. This information is from a Variety article. I'm not just wildly speculating here, but look forward to that in a minute. The improvisation apparently got out of hand, and that's why they were removed. Though it was also said in the same Variety article that the reason they had to go was because the question became about how to make the movie more efficient in the time that they had to do it. To me, though, reshooting 70% of the film doesn't scream efficiency, it screams, we didn't like the original version, so we're making a new version at the cost of great amounts of time, resulting in the cost of great amounts of money. Right, there's also some details of scenes that we might be seeing on the Blu-ray. One of them is Han aerial training with the Empire and then getting demoted for crashing a damaged TIE fighter into a hangar bay. After being sentenced, he's ushered out of the courtroom by Tag and Bink, characters from a now Legends comic series. Apparently this is one of the very last things that was cut, and it was a very difficult edit to make. Along with that scene, we very nearly got a snowball fight for some reason. We can hear more about that here.
Basically, we were up there waiting for the light to be right to shoot, and so Woody started throwing snowballs at people and the crew and everybody. And then they were like, well, screw it, let's film it. So they filmed a shot of us walking, and Jonas and I throw a snowball at each other. Woody's marching ahead, and then Jonas and I end up tackling each other in the snow. The
Lord and Miller version also conjured up a grim and gritty palette reflective of the seedy underbelly of conniving crooks, battle-weary war deserters, and ruthless crime syndicates. All that to me sounds more like a visual choice than it does the overall tone of the film. Ultimately though, the version that we got is the one that Disney seemed to want from the beginning. It seems like mostly this is what they were aiming for, with one exception. Ron Howard tried to get Tom Hanks for a Stormtrooper cameo, but they couldn't make it happen. I'm Devo, mate. One thing that I think is very interesting, and I don't say that lightly, even though you might disagree, but you're wrong. First off, they shot the Darth Maul scene twice because with the first one, it wasn't made clear who he was supposed to actually be. That's why in the final film we get him igniting the lightsaber. The second thing is, it was decided very late in the day that Darth Maul would be that final cameo. As according to director Ron Howard, that appearance was written in a very vague and generic way in the script, just saying that he was the boss, with Darth Maul listed as one of the potential cameos. The other names on the list were not made clear, but I think at the very least, and this is the wild speculation that I was talking about, and it also means I can probably put him in the thumbnail, and you know what that means, bloody clickety-click, mate. Darth Vader would have filled that role. There were multiple rumors that someone in the Darth Vader armor was spotted on set during reshoots. Of course, none of this necessarily means anything, but to me it also makes sense that the Empire would have a hand in the underworld in order to maintain control over the galaxy. And I also feel as if, with the way it was shot, Emilia Clarke never calls Darth Maul by name. So they really could have just plugged in anyone. Jabba the Hutt, Xizor or Shizor from Shadows of the Empire. I say Xizor. What do you say? Let me know. I'd love to know. Maybe the burnt out corpse of General Grievous, Count Dooku's head in a jar, old Harrison Ford Han Solo. Oh, imagine that. Now that's a twist. Ron Howard, however, pushed for Maul because his son is from the generation that grew up on the prequels and thought he would be the best and most exciting fit. Is there anything though from all of this that you would have liked to have seen in the final film? If so, please let me and others know below. Also, a like would be great, which may or may not help this video. And if you do want to subscribe and bell icon, there's videos here every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Also, I have a podcast called The Weekly Planet where we talk movies and comics and TV shows. This Monday, we're talking about Star Wars fatigue. And because of Solo's box office, is it starting to set in across all media? That's all linked below, or you can head over to planetbroadcasting.com to check it all out. But thanks for watching this. I appreciate it. Take care.